to Career Uprising. I'm your host and professional career coach, Lorraine Rise. Join me as I guide you through an amazing journey of self-discovery and empowerment. If you are looking for work, changing careers, or stuck in a toxic job, then this is the show for you. I offer both practical and spiritual guidance to help you up-level and advance your career. Let's start the uprising. Hey everyone, you are listening to episode 128, Dream Jobs Do Exist with Joel Manson. Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you're doing well. And if you could take a moment now as you're listening to give the show a rating and review on iTunes or however you like to listen, it helps the show and I appreciate it. And it's so important to me. That's why I make a mention of it every time we start this show. I really do appreciate it. And I read all the reviews and I give the show every Monday, so make sure you subscribe or follow so you get updates about every other Monday. So let's get into it. We have yet another success story here and client interview. That's really what we've been doing. I've had two recently. I had Brian McMullen and Lizeth Perez. So if you didn't hear those, please go back. Just in the last couple of episodes, I interviewed both of them. We have Joel that I'm going to introduce you to in just a moment. And then one more sneaking in here in in about 2 weeks, you'll hear that interview as well. So yes, we are still coming out of a pandemic. And yes, we are probably heading into a recession. But yes, you can still get hired. That's what I want you to know. And that's what Joel is going to help you to see today as well, to be proof of what is possible, even when things look tough, even when they look unachievable, they are. So I can't wait for him to tell his story, but let me give you just a little bit of background. So Joel came to me through a mutual connection that we both knew, and he signed up for my Career Jumpstart program in March of this year, 2022. And after leaving his last job, he'd been out of work for a year and searching. And really, in several ways, Joel definitely embodied the characteristics of my typical client. He was in his later career stage and not looking for just any job. Most people can go out there and just get a job if that's what they want. He was looking for something with meaning and purpose, something that he could possibly end his career with, maybe even that proverbial dream job. And he had great success. So I'm really excited that he's in the studio today. So welcome to the show, Joel.
Good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. I love this. And I think that nobody can tell a client's story better than themselves. So I love to bring clients on to share in their own words the transformation that they got. So why don't we just start with the basics? Tell us a little bit about what was going on in your career when you came to Career Uprising and when we first connected. What prompted you to want to get help?
Sure. So as you said, I was unemployed for several months, about a year, and I had interviewed with many companies. The market was really strong. Has been the last year. The last time I had looked for a new position, there weren't a lot of jobs out there. And this time there were a plethora of jobs that were a perfect match for what I do, which is revenue operations for technology companies. And so the market was strong and I was getting interviews, but I just was not able to close the deal. And I was interviewing for the right jobs, and I thought in each one they would go well. The interviews would go well, and I'd get great feedback. I never got any negative feedback, really. But I really just couldn't figure out what wasn't working. I knew I needed to sharpen my skills to be more relevant to the current market, but I felt like I was beating my head against the wall a little bit because I felt like I was performing well in interviews and just not getting like I said, not closing the deal.
Mm-hmm. And that is a very specific problem because I work with clients who usually it's one of two things. Sometimes they're not getting interviews and sometimes they're getting interviews but not offers. And those are two separate problems with two separate solutions. So I think it's important that you make that distinction. So to you, what do you feel like was the barrier? What was not working? Why did you feel like you weren't getting offers and what did you want to get help with in order to fix that?
Well, obviously, there was definitely preconceived notions for someone in my age range, especially with the type of companies I was targeting, which I'm targeting smaller technology companies where the average age of the employees is just much younger. And so I think it's even harder, but that's really my sweet spot. I had been doing it for the last 12 years unsuccessfully. The companies I'd worked for were unsuccessful, but I knew that it was the right fit for me and what I should be pursuing. So that was obviously an issue. And it was just challenging to continue to move forward, getting rejection after rejection. I mean, I tried to kind of stay upbeat, but to continue to interview without success is a little, it hurts a little bit.
Yeah, it can hurt a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was kind of my next question well, let's kind of go there a little more. I was going to ask, what was the most challenging part of the search for you and how did you overcome it? So did you feel like the rejection was that really, the hard thing, or what else was kind of challenging in there for you too?
No, I think for me it was demonstrating knowledge of kind of the current technologies and the current industry knowledge to kind of overcome that age bias. So I really focused on my prior experiences because the roles that I've been in, it's usually I come in and to fix things that are kind of screwed up from a standpoint of sales process and the tech stack around what the sales team is using. And so I've handled all the issues that these companies were trying to solve in one of my other positions. So I tried to kind of express that. I would say just communicating that I'm the right fit, even though I might not be in the right age group, I think was the biggest challenge.
I love that. You touched on something really important there as well, which is being a problem solver. You have to position yourself as somebody who can solve the company's problems. And if you do that, you can get hired at any age, which is exactly what happened to you. So I love the emphasis that you put on knowing what problems you solve for the employer and then communicating that and making that the talking point and the focal point of your interviews. Because truly, if you can convey that you know how to solve their problems, you've done it before, you've got a history of it, they're going to hire you, no matter how many gray hairs you have. That's what they're going to want. And I feel like that's what you did. So what was different about, we'll talk in a minute, about this opportunity that you got. I want to hear more about it. But in terms of the interviews, what was it about this one that clicked? Was it something that you did differently in the interview, or was it just some serendipity? What do you think enabled you to be successful with this new opportunity?
Well, I was attracted to this opportunity because of the success of the founders of the company. And what was missing in my other positions or what was missing in the companies I had worked for that I had identified was usually leadership and just execution. And the company I'm working for now, the co-founders had huge success. I mean, they sold their first company to Microsoft. They sold their second company to Salesforce for $700 million. And so the whole, my attitude had been there, done that. Well, that's what they had done. I knew that their leadership was strong, and I knew that they knew how to execute because they had done it several times over again. So that was really the big differentiator with this job. And then just the interview process. I went through, as I always do with a small company, many interviews. They were all conversational. They all went really well. There was only one interview that wasn't conversational, and I learned afterwards that it was on purpose. It was with the marketing operations professional. And basically the hiring manager, the chief revenue officer, told him to just make sure I knew what I was talking about, the kind of nuts and bolts of the job. But other than that, they were all really conversational. And all of my research about the company and the CEO and his social awareness and just his postings on LinkedIn, I really was believing the mission of the company, which in a lot of times it's just words, but I think that's what really attracted me, that this was going to be a good opportunity.
That's wonderful. So it sounds like you did your research, you knew a lot about them, and had a lot of familiarity and therefore confidence, right, going into the interview process, because it really sounds to me like this was not just another job you were applying for, right? This was something that kind of energetically you really felt aligned with, that wasn't just any job. It was right up your alley and the kind of thing you wanted to be doing and already knew a lot about. Because a lot of people do, when they're unemployed especially, they apply for stuff that they don't really care if they get it that much. It's just kind of another job they're qualified for, right? And their heart's not really in it. And then those usually don't work out, right? But it sounds to me like your heart was really in it. Like your mind and everything was like, this is the job that I want. Did you kind of feel that with this opportunity? Did it feel a little bit different?
Yeah, it did from start to finish. And the other thing is, the company's in a very different stage than the other companies I had worked for the last 12 years. I was working not really for startups, but more like reboots. Many times it was a company that had been in business for several years and had a new opportunity in a different business line. But this is a stage one startup. And that's part of the magic, is that companies don't hire my position this early in their when they only have 60, 70 employees. Almost all the companies I worked for had around 200 employees. And this was interesting because I asked at a company event a few months ago in San Francisco, I asked the CEO about that this was really strange because companies just don't hire before everything kind of hits the fan. That's usually what happens, is companies already have that growth in the sales team, and then they realize, oh, wait a minute, we got to document process, we got to kind of get our act together. And this is the opposite, where we're able to build it from the ground up. So I'm on board with an enablement professional so we're basically working together to build everything up for this company in anticipation of really growing significantly. But that's the real difference, and that was just another one of those things that made it feel like special opportunity.
I think it's important as a job seeker to pay attention to that, right? Because where your focus and your energy and your emotion goes, that's where your results go. So it sounds to me like you really had all of that aligned, and you also had a very crystal clear job target. And I think that I knew that then, but I can hear you say it now too. You knew exactly what you were looking for, what kind of company, what problems you solve. You had that target and that clarity. And that's what a lot of people lack too. They're kind of applying for a whole plethora of jobs that they probably could do, but are really not, in that kind of more narrow target. So I think that definition, that clarity is really important, with also helped in your success. A lot of things did, definitely. Well, tell us more about the actual job. Tell us more about how it's going, what you're doing, how long you've been in it. Tell me a little bit more. I'd love to just kind of get an update.
Sure. So I've been there about 3 months. I'm heading up revenue operations. The company's name is Catch. It's a data privacy technology company based in San Francisco, but of course we're all kind of remote all over the country, and we have a UK team, and our CMO's from Australia, so everybody's kind of from all over the world. And as I said, it's a stage one startup, so we have about 70 employees, and it's different because I'm building the revenue support and the revenue operations from the ground up, but I'm having to think about what happens when we scale. So we don't have, right now we have less than 15 salespeople. A year from now, we might have 100. So as we build the tech stack and as I, build the processes within the system, I'm thinking about, where it needs to be when we grow. And like I said, the company the co-founders have had a lot of success. They also are part of their own venture company called Superset. So they invest in not just our company, but in other companies. And the other investors in Superset are very well-known investors from LinkedIn and different places, again, because they've had success. And so they're able to kind of pick and choose where they get funding from. What's most exciting is where we are in the market right now, because there's certain things with startups that happen with most startups. They get as much funding as they can. They hire as many people as they can because the investors want them to scale up and ramp up as fast as possible. We are the opposite of that. And so our big competitors right now are laying off employees. And those companies that kind of got overfunded are in a bind now, because if we do go into a recession and their revenues suffer, they've got to cut employees. We didn't do that. We didn't raise as much. We could have raised much more money than we did. We didn't overhire. And so now we're in a great position as we kind of go to market to really take a lot of market share, because our main competitor just laid off 10% of their workforce, for example.
Mm-hmm. It's always a little risky and a little exciting to be part of a startup. And I've worked for several throughout my career. So I hear what you're saying. I love that. Well, I'm so glad that it's going well for you and that you have the opportunity to really help build something from the ground up. Like you said, that is an awesome thing. Well, I'd love to know more about, you going through the program. What was most helpful to you in terms of the coaching that we did? What did you get out of that process?
Sure. I think the biggest thing was just coming to the realization that I needed help. And so kind of taking that step. And probably the biggest thing was just getting my confidence renewed and just talking through process and talking through what I was doing and potentially, what I could do differently to improve. And I'd say, just looking at the interview process, the biggest ways that you helped me really were looking at the interview process, identifying areas for improvement. A big thing was just modernizing my resume. Like, I didn't know how to do that. And obviously, most of us don't update our resume, the style of our resume all the time. And so if we haven't done it in 20 years, it needs an update. So that was big. And then you really helped me just to be more concise in my answers. And a big one was a much better strategy for compensation negotiation. I was doing it all wrong, and we fixed that. And that worked out really well in this position. Another thing about the compensation in this position that just was another warning sign to the positive that this was great was it was the first time in my career where they asked me how I wanted to structure my compensation between salary, bonus, and equity, stock options. Like, what was most important to me, they would then tailor it towards that. And that was really interesting.
That is fantastic. Yeah, and that's probably because they're a startup, so they have some more freedom and flexibility and, a little bit more agile there, because that's not real normal in most cases. So that is very special. That's wonderful.
Right.
And I think I do remember that. I know you and I did definitely spend some time on the salary negotiation process, because I felt like once we started working together, it came together really quickly. And I kind of turned around and you had this offer. So that was definitely, I think, a focal point for us, was getting through those final stages of negotiating it. So that's fantastic. Well, one last question I'd like to ask all of my clients too is, you can't help but go through a career change or a job search process without learning something about yourself or growing in some way. What did you learn about yourself going through this transition?
It really reiterated the confidence in my abilities, because at different times, especially when things aren't going well, I thought about doing something else, doing something related but different. But I would always come back to, this is my sweet spot, this is what I'm good at, this is what I have experience in, and this is where I can provide the greatest benefit to the company. So I kept coming back to that. But I think I just learned how important it is to keep my skill set, almost like continuing education. Stay abreast of new technologies, improve my organizational skills, and just look at, there's so many kind of free courses on LinkedIn now that can just kind of keep you sharp, whether it's in technology or just your approach. And so I have kind of this renewed effort to improve myself more than I think I did before.
Wonderful. Love that. That's what coaching is all about, right? We have to be willing to look at ourselves and improve ourselves, as that's because you're at the, forefront of all of this. It's you making this change and really putting in the hard work. So I'm there to help and facilitate and guide and advise, but the clients, they put in the work. So good for you. Well, congrats again on this job. I'm so excited. I still remember that excited email that you sent me saying that the job was amazing and you wanted to be on the show. I love getting emails like that from clients, definitely. So congrats to you, and thank you so much for taking the time today to share our story. And I guess what I'll have you leave everyone with is, if there's anybody out there, and I'm sure there is listening, going through a similar transition, what would be your advice to them, to somebody, especially like a 50 plus or, client like you? What would be your advice to them right now?
I think that it's hard when things aren't going well. Like you said, sometimes you'll just take something to be employed. I think you really have to choose the right company, and you really have to pay attention to culture and the people you're working with, because to have a good long-term opportunity, you need to have that connection with the people, especially with a smaller company. But I think it's so super important, not just to settle for a job, but to be able to have that fit. And that's really what I felt with Catch, was everything was just like, we're all on the same page here. And you talk about these things in your interview, but those are the questions you really need to ask, is really figure out if it's a collaborative environment and if everybody works together well, and what are the missions of the company, and things like that, I would say, are the most important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Great advice. I love it. Thank you so much, Joel, for sharing your story today and for being a client in the Career Uprising family. So for all you listeners out there, for more shows like this, the easiest way to listen is go to my website, careeruprising.com/podcast. The entire archive is there. And I will be back in 2 weeks with yet another fantastic client with similar results. And I can't wait to share that story with you guys as well. So I'll talk to you soon. That's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you heard today, please consider giving the show a positive review on iTunes. It would mean a lot to me, and it would help to spread the word so that others can learn about the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and I can't wait to connect with you again next time on Career Uprising.
This show is brought to you by inflowradio.com, the best curated talk radio network for personal development, wellness, spirituality, and conscious business.